G'day, Michael here. I've got a Black Widow up and running, fully functional, doing basically my first, I'm going to call it paying job. I've got a 0.8mm tip in it, and I actually ended up installing the volcano head. You can see it's very deep top to bottom versus the other types of heads that are much flatter. It's only about about 12mm high. This is about 30mm high, and the tip is mounting it in there vertically. So what I'm able to get out of this 0.8mm tip, I'm able to get about 9 to 12 cubic millimeters a second out of. And I actually have had a few issues with this machine. The current set for the y-axis, I bumped up a little bit higher. It was set at 1000, which I guess is just 1 amp, so 1000 milliamps. I bumped up to 1400 because it did actually jam and lose position on a print. I'll just grab hold of that. Which is basically the first one of these. It's jumped out of position. I don't know whether you can see that properly. Hope it shows up. It jumped out of position, I don't know, what's it, about 2mm. Now these are big parts for my other printers, but as you can see on the Black Widow, it looks like a very small part. So far the printing's going quite nicely on this job. Like I said, this is the first. Now there's a few things I really like about this machine. The feeder motor on this guy seems to be able to pull the heavy spool really well. I don't seem to have any great problems. I ended up employing the friction braking rollers that I printed in one of my earlier videos. This is the first print I've actually installed it upon. This metal frame is actually really good. It's very rigid. You get very little deflection with any normal forces. There was some downsides. They didn't quite have all the screws required to put all the bits and bobs on it. I'll just get the extras that came with the machine. Right, so it came with this print head, which uses the tips like you see in the average, where is it please now? The average sort of everyday 3D printer. That's what it basically has in it. There's my hand there. Okay, now the volcano tip that I've got in the machine right now, as you can see, it's got about 3 times the amount of thread inside the block. That's the emitter on the left. And comparing it to what's actually in the printer, don't know whether you can see that, the block height is substantially different. And so this volcano tip is obviously a higher volume tip. Alright, now the machine also came with this extra driver, which I assume is basically not necessary because I'm running it directly as wired, but you can add this guy in the circuit so you can throw more current at the hotbed, or heat bed, whatever you want to call it. So, you know, this could be wired in, no problem. I was given lengths of wire, etc., to wire it in, but I could not find a location as to where, you know, I could mount this. Basically, I've got this guy. It's got 4 screw locations in it. Those centers look like they could actually mount in the end track here, but the hole centerings are a little bit out. The other thing that is a bit annoying with it, the wiring length would basically put this unit somewhere either inside or outside this control box. Now I can't see any valid place outside the control box to put this. Yes, so there was instructions given as to how to wire it in, like in the wiring sequence, but not how to protect it or mount it or whatever. So it's a bit of a shortcoming there in the way this is done. I was also given, which I can't spot right now, a sensor for measuring the height, but there was no bracket supplied for actually mounting it to the back plate on the x-axis. Now, I think I mentioned in a previous video, I'm not sure, I'll cover the ground again, this tip was made to be mounted off towards one side here, but mounted the way it was going to be mounted, it would have actually used up, it would have wasted quite a bit of my print width. Right now I get the full 370mm in width. The way it would have been mounted, I would have been flat out getting 330. And what would have happened is the tip would have been off the table here, so I can get my hand in a good place, off the table here, and well inside the edge on this side, so I would have lost quite a bit of print area. So the way it was mounted was not very useful. I ended up printing up this spacer here so as to get this whole print head clear of this frame here, so that the motor wouldn't bang on this side here. So now I get basically the full width that is possible out of this machine. And yeah, although that's a criticism I have, in the defence, this mounting plate here is very sort of, it's rigid, it's strong, it can handle a good cantilever load, and there's lots of mounting holes. So you know, you're bound to find some mounting to suit whatever it is you need to mount. Unfortunately, there's no bracket for that sensor, so I'll probably just end up printing a bracket for that sensor, and that's if I employ it. The manual adjustment's very easy on this guy anyway, because they're on the extremities. They're simple, like a little thumb nut sort of thing. And I ended up putting this 4mm glass piece on there, which I just had a glazier made up. Currently I've just got some a very thin PVA. I could have used AV56. Anyhow, I'm just using the PVA here because I'm just printing basically test pieces here, and I don't need the superb holding power yet. I'm not doing anything too crazy yet. Although this has been difficult on previous printers to print something this size. But I notice the temperature is quite good right out to the edge. What they have here on this heated bed, don't know whether you can see that, you can see this foil and foam, and then you've got the aluminium there, and then they've got like a plastic coating on top. So the aluminium, focus, the aluminium disperses the heat quite nicely, so it reaches basically the full area of the hotbed, and they've insulated the underside with that foam and foil. So the hotbed is actually very even and very good. I'm very happy with that. That's worked well. So again, the actual feeder unit for the extruder is very sturdy and seems to be able to handle, you know, dragging the 5 kilo spool without any trouble. And the hotbed, I do like the arrangement, the way they've done that. The bearings on these tracks, it's very good the way it operates. There's, I'm going to use the word, there's no play. The only play that exists is actual deflection in the materials, which is minimal in itself. So I'm quite happy with that too. What else is there? Oh yes, the Z-axis is actually driven by one motor, and they're connected via a belt from one end to the other. So you can really level this machine mechanically, so it is, you know, properly leveled across that span, and you can be confident of a nice square build because it is so nicely squarely made, and it's very precisely made, and all the corner components, they are not plastic, they are metal, and they're nicely machined. And I mean, they're prettily, let's just have a look at this front one for argument's sake, they're kind of pretty with the red anodizing and so forth, so they've done a nice job cosmetically. So I guess the only little criticisms I had was they hadn't quite resolved the mounting of the print head. Not hard to overcome though. You could dial up your own spacer, that's all I needed to cure that. There was a couple of screws short in that, naturally, because the screw lengths they provided did not allow for that spacer. But basically the threads are like 3mm and 5mm and 4mm, so there's nothing impossible to get you know, off the shelf elsewhere. And funny enough, the bits I was missing on this were supplied in excess with my GTAC Cruiser. So basically the spare parts bin of the other one managed to let me finish this off nicely. So at the end of the day, I ended up with quite a good printer. I do like the drag chain arrangements and how they did have everything pre-wired in there, so it's quite simple. I haven't bothered taking the tags off yet. Haven't bothered taking the tags off yet. There's the other little bits and pieces. Oh yes, here's my sensor. That is without a mounting bracket. So I've just got to print something up. Alright, now the other thing I did, of course, when I mounted, sorry about shaking around, when I mounted this print head, I actually mounted it up much higher, so as to have more of the Z-axis capacity in this machine. So what's really good about this is now I've actually been able to gain a very big print volume in total. This is the biggest part I've printed so far. It's sort of the first real part, but I'm looking forward to doing much larger parts. So yeah, I'm very happy so far. Anyhow, I guess that's enough waffle from me. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, ask a question, leave a comment. Bye for now.